everyone, welcome to a new episode of It's Lit, It's Dalck. As you just saw, this week we're going to discuss, analyze, and study A Soldier for the Crown, a short story by Mr. Charles Johnson. Let's just get started right away to see what's coming up. Quick start. Let's do this activity and then we can continue with the rest of the class. Share about a time you or someone you know risked something in hopes of a desirable outcome. Did subsequent events unfold as expected? Was the risk worthwhile? Think about that, write it down, discuss whatever it is that you're going to do in your class, and then we can just continue to the next part. We're going to analyze literary elements in this lesson. The first thing that we have to take into consideration are the genre elements of a short story. Number one, it's told from a particular point of view that impacts the reader's understanding of events. Second thing, it contains literary elements that influence the development of the plot. Number three, it expresses a theme or the author's message, something that we might call a moral. Remember, there are four basic elements to a short story: plot, setting, characters, and a theme. All right? Now we're going to analyze among the different literary elements in the story. We're going to focus on point of view. It refers to the method that the author uses to narrate the story. In a work written, number one, in the first person point of view, the narrator is a character in the story, and the events of the plot are experienced from the narrator's limited perspective. That is important information that we need to take into consideration. If it's the first person point of view, the narrator is limited because will probably most certainly be one of the characters, if not the main character of the story. So as a character that develops and interacts within the story, the plot, and the settings, he or she is going to be limited. Second thing, when the writer uses the third person point of view, the narrator is not a character. He's not a character in the story, but an outside observer. That means that the third person point of view narration can give you a lot more information about what's going on in the story, about the events that unravel and develop through the story. A third person point of view narrator can be omnipresent, can be everywhere, can be omniscient, can know everything. Sometimes there's something called irony. And the irony, there's a specific type of irony in which the narrator and we as readers are revealed with information that the characters in the story don't know. All right? So that's one specific type of irony that authors always use. But that is only possible when it happens, when the story has a third point of view narration. The first point of view narration, as I was just saying, is a very limited type of narration because it's one of the characters in the story who's telling the sequence of events. Now, a more unusual method of narration is the second person point of view. In this, the narrator addresses someone using the pronoun you. It's maybe talking to you as a reader, or maybe talking to you as a different character or a different person from the story. Let's see a little bit more. In A Soldier for the Crown, the narrator addresses the main character. Weird, right? Alexander Freeman, but often speaks as if he or she has entered the mind of the character. Let's just read that again. In this story, A Soldier for the Crown, The type of narration, the narrator himself or herself, okay, we still don't know if it's a he or she. The narrator addresses the main character, Alexander Freeman, but often speaks as if he or she has entered the mind of the character. This is something only possible when the narrator is not in the first person. May happen in the third person, not that common. It's normally the second person point of view that allows the narrator to point and speak to one of the characters. And as you can see, it can even sound, or you can feel, as a reader, you can feel that the narrator is speaking from the inside of the character's mind. All right? With the second point of view, the reader may not know if the author is addressing a character, the reader, or themselves. The reader, as the readers, must piece together information the narrator reveals to understand plot, events, and characters' behavior. Not everything is explicit. This type of narration allows the reader to interact a little bit more with the events in the story. Start thinking about making inferences. What's going to happen next? Is this because of that? Connecting ideas, connecting prior knowledge. There's a lot of things that we can do in a dynamic relationship when we read this type of stories that have the second person point of view. The point of view can also shape the development of the theme. Listen, the theme. What's the story about? That point of view can actually take you from point A to point B, from understanding one thing to thinking that it was something that in the end it's different. So everything relates to the theme when we talk about the second point of view, because it can shape, it can make you go from the beginning of the story thinking that the theme was one thing, let's say friendship, but then it unravels the end of the story and you realize that the real theme behind the story was not friendship, but let's say betrayal, and how that affects friendship. The underlying message of the story, which is the theme, is really affected by the type of narration. So by affecting how much the readers know, and when they learn key information, that's how the author uses this technique to reveal and to develop not only the story, the plot, but also the theme and the message behind the story. Second aspect to analyze here is the plot. We're not only going to analyze, but we're also going to evaluate it. We're going to put the scope under it. We're going to put it under the scope to see what's going on here. Plot is nothing but the sequence of events in a literary work. The beginning, the middle, and the end. Depending on this textual sequence, they have different names. If it's argumentation, they have names for them. If it's description, if it's instruction, whatever the textual sequence it is, there is always, again, a sequence, a systematic way to present the information. Because when you're reading, or for a writer, it's impossible to present everything at the same time. You have to have a structure, you have to have a sequence. In narration, that is called plot, all right? The sequence of events in a literary work. Charles Johnson, the author, uses literary elements to develop the events that surround the main character, a gambler named Alexander Freeman. In the story that we're going to read, that is A Soldier for the Crown. As we read, we're going to analyze the writer's use of literary elements, and we're going to evaluate how they shape the author's portrayal of the plot. How are we going to evaluate? Well, we can evaluate the effectiveness. As we read, we can start and think, was it really effective? Is the message really communicated in an easy, understandable way, or is it difficult to understand? Is it something that is difficult to discover, or was it really helpful that the author used these elements in order for me to understand as a reader the plot and how the events happen. We're going to do that. There are aspects of the plot that we have to analyze in order to get there. First thing is suspense. Suspense is the excitement or tension that the readers feel as they wait to find out how a story ends. The author builds suspense when he introduces the main character as a risk taker. Right? When somebody tells you that the main character is a risk taker, you immediately start thinking about, well, what are the risks that he or she is going to take? And he creates suspense about the story's outcome with statements like, but did you win this time? Second thing is the setting. Okay, the setting is the time and the time and place in which the events take place. Setting also includes the works of historical context. The historical context refers to the conditions and customs during the time period in which the story occurs. In A Soldier for the Crown, the writer includes details that tell you the historical context. As you read, we're going to think about how the setting influences the event of the plot. It's simple, guys. It's super simple. If the sequence of events happen in a specific time and place, which is the setting, that's where the action takes place. If the setting is different, the plot may be different. All right? It's not the same type of events that you can develop during, let's say, World War II than ancient Egypt. All right? The setting will automatically affect how the plot develops and what the characters can or cannot do. The third element in the type of literary devices or elements that we're going to be analyzing is ambiguity. And ambiguity is the uncertainty created when readers can interpret words, phrases, or events in more than a way. When you can, or when you see, when you're reading something and you see that you can actually have different interpretations for the same thing, for the same paragraph, the same phrase. It can be a piece of discourse that the character is speaking. That's what we call ambiguity. Well, this can be interpreted in this sense. It can be also interpreted in this sense or in that sense. So when a phrase or a piece of text has different or can be interpreted in different forms, that we can say is ambiguity. The author builds the story by forcing the reader to put together clues about Freeman. As we read, we are going to understand these clues may change. Again, because Freeman, as the main character, has to interact in a setting with the plot, with other characters, with situations, and that's the road that the author wants us to take. For language conventions, which is the third part that we're going to be analyzing about this story, we are going to study subject-verb agreement. The subject and verb in a clause, they must agree in number. This is what we call grammatical number. All right? Singular, plural. That's even more complex in Spanish, in which they not only have to agree in grammatical number, but also in grammatical genre. If it's male or female, right? If it's a man or a woman. In English, that's not necessary. We're going to use only number agreement, grammatical number, if it is singular or plural. That means if the subject is singular, of course, the verb must also be singular. A plural subject requires a plural verb. And this is basically stated through auxiliaries and third-person forms of the verb. Let's see, for the example, here says, the document dated April 1783 brings a broad smile to your lips. When a pronoun is the subject of a sentence, the verb also needs to agree in person. First, second, or third, and number. In this example, we see the document. Document is the main, it's the core of the noun phrase, all right? Document, that is the subject. The word that's just a determiner. But the main word in the noun phrase here is document, and that's the word with which the verb must agree in number. So document, if we change it into a pronoun, it's it. It belongs to the third person singular. That means that the verb has to agree with that. That's why the verb bring has to go with the S, because it's a third person singular. So the document, it, brings a broad smile to your lips. For example, as I just explained, if instead of the word of nouns or proper nouns like document, Mary, Peter, etc., is changed and we use a pronoun instead, the verb will have to agree with that pronoun. As you can see in the example, I am, he is, you are, or they are. When we read the story, or while we read the story, we have to notice how correct subject-verb agreement adds clarity to what is happening in the story. Because if you don't have a subject-verb agreement, it will be really difficult to understand. You would be getting lost if we didn't find the correct verb agreement in the story. We're just going to analyze a little bit of that in isolated ways. And with that, my friends, we will have finished. That's gonna be it for today. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like buttons. Well, hit the only one like button. And I'll see you very, very soon, guys.